welcome to the Big Three, where we get to talk about this week's sermon from North Boulevard Church of Christ in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. We'll take questions and make observations from you, me, Jax, and this week's special guest, my husband, Brent Rosser.
It's good to be with you guys. Thanks for asking me. I didn't realize I was supposed to say that.
You are glad, though. You are.
Well, we had a great lesson this morning from Tony Holt in the Upside Down Movement series, and he gave a quote that's just really kind of sitting right there. He said, an upside down movement is led by people who are turned inside out. That, you know, to lead this upside down movement, we've got to be fully transformed by the Spirit and by Jesus Christ. And I mean, he nailed that home, I think, 2 or 3 times, and every time he did, I think I wrote it down every time he said it.
It's so good. Yeah, he talked about Acts 26 and about Paul before King Agrippa, and so Paul gives us that perfect model of how to share it. And so it was such a great sermon. I have to tell you, if you didn't get to listen to it, go back and listen to it. We'll remind you again at the end, but at the end, Tony tells his story, and it's powerful.
Yeah.
And so he modeled for us how to do it.
Yeah.
But what was your highlight? We're gonna all go around and share a highlight.
Yeah.
Start us off.
So, I mean, it is, Tony sharing his story. A lot of times, I feel like me and a lot of other people may feel we don't have an interesting story. We don't have a I met Jesus on the road to Damascus testimony, but we still have a testimony. We still have a way to impact someone's life, and that was just a really good reminder for me this morning.
So good.
Yeah, and it shows that, God can use anybody's story. Tony's story, who says he grew up, sharecropper's kid in North Carolina, or Saul, who was persecuting Christians, someone who never thought that would be a follower of Jesus. Jesus, so on either extreme. And I'm one of those that grew up in the church, and so kind of feel like I don't have some amazing conversion story. And I think people like me, and I'm speaking for myself, not for everybody, but sometimes I have to remind myself I was lost, even though I grew up in the church, and I don't have some crazy conversion story, but I was lost until I accepted Jesus, and so I do have that story to tell people about what He's done in my life.
Yeah, and I think also because I also grew up in the church, hardly missed any church Sundays my whole life. And so I think sometimes we forget that someone else had to come and make us saved, because we start thinking it was us.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we didn't have this. I had this in this major sin pattern, and then it's flipped around because God saved me. God saved me, even if I didn't have that sad story. Praise God, I didn't have that sad story, to come from.
Yeah. Well, a week ago in our small group, we talked about. It's funny, we talked about this, and so. We talked about how, most of us in that room did not have some crazy conversion story, but each of us could talk about people that helped us along our way that was really important to us when we were lost or searching, or even after we accepted Jesus, that helped us in our walk.
Yeah, that saw something in us. I think everybody had that pattern of a story that someone saw them and said, I think you'd be good at this.
Everyone's got an old life, even if your old life is not crazy different from your new one. You still have an old life before Christ. Yeah,
that's so good. Okay, and that brings me to, so you got your highlight in. You said yours.
I did, yes.
Okay. So what I was really, I'm not a numbers person, but sometimes numbers really do tell a story. And so when he shared that Lifeway survey of people who are just in Nashville, not far away from us, and how unchurched people, if the most likely way they'll be receptive to the gospel is if it's a friend or a family member, a neighbor. And so I think that's my takeaway from this too, is I may not be going out into all far away to tell people about Jesus, but I do have friends and family and neighbors who need to know this.
Well, and I've noticed too, talking with people who might not be believers, if they feel like you're talking to them because they're a non-believer, it almost feels like you're checking off a box.
Okay.
And it almost feels like you see them as the next step. Yeah. And it can feel kind of impersonal, but if you're sharing it with someone who you love, who you're connected to, it feels like you're doing it because you want to share this with them.
We're just friends.
And I've definitely seen, in firsthand experience, that is much more effective, and it matters to that person, and it takes a quicker effect, I think, on
that.
them.
That's really good, Jax. That's so good.
Yeah, it's just about relationships.
Yeah.
You know, it's about pouring yourself into other people's lives, and
so ask God to show you who you're supposed to talk to this week. So good. Well, if you have any more questions, please let us know by using that QR code on the screen.
And if you want to rewatch the sermon or watch it for the first time, and y'all, we really encourage you to watch this sermon, you can find it at boulevard.to/sermons. That wraps up this week's Big Three.
So thanks for being with us. Look for this podcast on your favorite platforms, and be sure to join us next week for Boulevard's Big Three.